everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to encourage everyone before we start to go follow Ween Online on both Instagram and Twitter at Ween Online, also using the hashtag Ween Online. I want to get straight into it. I want to thank Angela Yee from Power 105.1 for joining us today. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and many of our Ween members want to be radio personalities. They look at you every day and they're aspiring to be radio personalities, and we wanted to take the time for them to get insight from you and someone who's been in the game for a while and built their own brand. So I'll get right into the questions. The first question we have is, many of our listeners are mass communication majors at their college campuses and are learning the technical side of the business. But can you talk a minute about some of the skills that are needed but are not taught in an academic setting to be a great radio host? What are some of the skills that they may not be learning in the classroom, in your opinion?
Well, I will say this first and foremost: having the technical abilities is definitely the foundation of what it is that you need to do, because a lot of people start off as like a producer or a board app. So it's great to have that experience and to be able to do that and have that skill. So great to go to school and learn all of those things. But I do believe that in order to be a great radio personality, you also have to be the type of person that is social, that goes out, that attends functions. It's important to be able to talk about things firsthand. A lot of times people look at going out as like, oh, you're just going to have fun, party. It's not really what you go out for. When you go out, you're going out, what songs are big in the clubs, what's happening, this person, I'm going to this album release party so I can go and listen to the album and comment and hear things firsthand. So artists can see, okay, she respects what I do. She came out to my, listening event, showed me some love. So now we have something to talk about when you come up to the show. Different things like that I think are really important. Also, it's important to stay on top of whatever's going on. When I first started, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have all of those things. Now I can go on Twitter and see what's trending and say, okay, oh, I forgot the Democratic debate is on. Let me go make sure I watch that, because that's going to be a big deal. We're going to talk about that. The BET Hip Hop Awards. Maybe ordinarily I don't care about that, but I'm going to watch it because I know everybody else is talking about it. You have to kind of be in tune with what your audience is in tune with and make sure that you are an authority on it.
Right. Very good. Very good advice. So my next question is, a lot of millennials are focused on building their brand, but we know that it takes years of hard work and dedication. How did you begin the process of building your brand and becoming respected as the go-to person in radio? Should our younger listeners be focused on brand building right now or something else? An example, is it starting a blog, a podcast, internship? What are your thoughts?
I think it's important to first realize what you want your voice to be, who you are, and don't sway from that. Like, I know how, even with the Breakfast Club, the three of us have very distinct, different personalities. I am the nice one, the mediator, I'll ask the questions, but I'm not going to attack you. I'm on your side. Charlemagne is going to attack you and, try to get you off your game and probably say something rude that's, a headline. And Envy is going to be the person that is, he kind of is the person that holds everything together and keeps it moving. So it's important to know who you are. Like, I'm not going to get out of character just to try to get a headline. I never want to be that person that is like, people are scared to come to it's just not me. So I think it's important for you to know who you are and to not stray from that. And once you establish who it is that you are, then you build your brand according to that. I look at somebody like Nicole Bitchie, and I knew her when she first started her blog. And she said she would write things. And sometimes when you're not in the position of like a celebrity or whatever, you don't realize how hurtful and mean certain things are. Because I think with Twitter, with Instagram, with these blogs, we forget that these are real people with real feelings. And people don't realize that until it happens to them. So I think she said Tiana Taylor had to check her one day, and after that, she was like, okay, I want my blog to be like positive and nicer. And now she's reinvented herself again. You are going to grow. You're not going to have to stick with what it is that you come into the game with. But it's important to have a really good knowledge of yourself and stay in tune with yourself and to always keep expanding and growing. And I always say that when you get really comfortable with what it is that you're doing, then it really is time for you to expand and grow. You should never feel too comfortable. Like, once I feel like, okay, I'm doing my morning show, I feel good. I'm comfortable. I get up every day. I know what I have to do. What's next for me? Now I got to find something else that I have to master.
Very good. Thank you so much. So our next question is, What inspired you to become a radio personality? Who do you look to for inspiration?
Well, for being a radio personality, it wasn't something that I actually went to school for. It was something that happened because, I actually was doing marketing, and which did help me out a lot as a radio personality. And when Shade 45 first started as Sirius M&M station, they gave me the opportunity to be, the sidekick on the morning show. So of course I was like, okay, good. That sounds really interesting. I definitely want to do it. And I took that opportunity and ran with it. And I think the best thing that you can do is listen to yourself. Sometimes you listen to other radio personalities and you start trying to emulate what it is that they do and copy them. And you don't want to do that. You want to be fresh and original. So I think about things that I heard growing up and what attracted me to people. Like I used to love Wendy Williams, how even when she didn't have a guest, she was very conversational. You felt like, okay, I could sit here and listen to her talk about some BS for hours because of how she talks about it. She could talk about going to the supermarket and somehow it's interesting. Or you could listen to Angie Martinez, and she was like the cool person that was in the mix, that was friends with people, that was kind of in the know. And then you could listen to somebody like Howard Stern, who had a way of making people open up when he does his interviews. So I think you can listen to those things, but I think it's the most important thing to do is listen to yourself. It's a painful thing to do, but the thing that I did that made me get better was I would take my shows home, I would put them in the car, and I used to hate listening to myself, but it's so important to do that so you can hear what you sound like and hear what you need to improve on and be your own harshest critic.
Thank you so much for that. So the radio industry is becoming very competitive. How does one maintain their longevity over the years?
I think there are some great things happening and some things that are making it more difficult. There's a lot more syndicated shows, so there's not as many slots as there used to be. A lot of times radio hosts could say, okay, I'm going to go do mornings in, another city and eventually make my way to wherever it is that I want to be. But a lot of times those opportunities aren't as readily available. On the flip side, a lot of people are listening to podcasts. Podcast is probably the fastest growing thing right now. And that is an excellent way, for you to hone your skills and to get known. People make a lot of money off of podcasts. They have SoundCloud, they have YouTube, that you can post your podcast on those and on iTunes and everything and make money off of it and get advertisers and all of that. So it is quite possible for you to go rent a studio for $50 for 2 hours and do your own podcast. It just is a lot more work than you going out and trying to find a job. But on the flip side, you get to make it about whatever you want to make it about. And again, find your voice and find your niche and what it is that you are going to do. But I do feel like while those opportunities on FM radio aren't as easy to come by, and they've never been that easy to get anyway, there's a lot more opportunities with internet radio. Apple has their station. There's so many different opportunities out there with creating your own internet station that if you really want to do something, and I'll bring it to Combat Jack for that. He has his podcast, and Combat Jack came to me a long time ago. I told him he should do radio because he was a lawyer. And I was like, he was kind of not wanting to do it. And I said, you're an expert in this music business. You're an entertainment lawyer. You've worked with some of the biggest names in entertainment. You have a different type of insight into things that people can look at you and say, okay, he knows what he's talking about because he really worked with this person and he understands the legal side of things. He brings a whole nother aspect to it. And so I told him he should be doing radio. And I was trying to get him on Sirius, and that didn't work out. And I was like, just do your own show. And he really did do his own show. And he's making great money doing it. And he's helped put a lot of other people on after that. But a lot of people, you tell them, you should go do this, you should go do that, and they're not going to do it. You have to really, really be motivated. It's not something that's just going to happen for you.
Right. And just to go off our questions a little bit, what kind of keeps you motivated?
I'm motivated because I do love what I do. Every day at work is different. And so there's always different news happening. I feel a responsibility. If I don't go to work, I feel terrible. I feel like I let people down. And I hate to hear Charlamagne and Envy do the rumor report. It sounds awful. And I know that there's a certain type of balance that I bring to the show. Sometimes that's needed because sometimes they say things that I think are so absolutely ridiculous. Me as a female, me as a person who is probably more empathetic than they are. So sometimes when I'm not there, I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like I gotta, be there. So that's important to me. But I also have other aspirations, and radio is kind of the core of everything that it is that I'm doing. So
that's great. Thank you. So our next question is, you're an inspiration to millions of young girls throughout the country and the world. What's next for you? Do you have a dream project? Do you plan to take on new goals and projects?
Well, I recently just signed a production deal for Lip Service, so that is something that's probably going to be happening for real soon. And I'm excited about that because that's like something that I created. That's my baby.
And
And
for those
also,
who don't know, just share with us what lip service is.
well, Lip Service was a show that I had at first when I was on Sirius. It was a nighttime show that when I was doing the morning show and I was Cypher Sound's co-host, I had a little segment on there and they liked it so much that they gave me my own show. So it was a weekly nighttime show and it was a really popular show on there. And then when I left and came to Power 105, I couldn't do it anymore, but now I restarted it as a podcast. And so the next step, and it's the kind of show that I really enjoy doing it because it is a niche show. There's not a lot that you can listen to where artists talk about things other than their music or what they're working on. It's more personal. It's about your personal life. It's about, we love to hear about what goes on in our favorite artists' lives or just interesting stories from people we don't even know sometimes. We watch reality TV and we see all these people we never heard of before and we're fascinated by their lives. And I think sometimes a lot of artists enjoy doing lip service because it's not the same questions they get asked all the time. It's different, it's fun, and you get to express a different side of yourself and really see somebody's personality. So lip service does all of that.
Perfect. And how can our listeners and viewers listening to lip service? What's the social media? Be sure to plug that in as well.
It's on SoundCloud and it's on iTunes. On SoundCloud, it's Lip Service Podcast. So you just go to soundcloud.com/Lip Service Podcast. The link is in my bio on Twitter and on Instagram too, if you want to just click it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we're going to go into our next question, which is really good because you spoke about sometimes being more empathetic than your other co-hosts who just don't care and sometimes hurt people's feelings. So what are some misconceptions about women in the radio industry and how do you advocate against those misconceptions?
I think it's difficult sometimes. Like I look at certain things like if we have a guest on the show and, the guys are guilty of this and I've heard them do it, it might be a situation where if Envy or Charlemagne is talking to an artist and they're like, oh, let me get your information, I have some ideas I want to hit you up about, that's fine. Now, as a female, if I'm talking to a male, co-host, and I'm like, oh yeah, I feel weird sometimes asking for people's information because they're like, oh, look at her, she's trying to do this, she's trying to do that, because they look at it as you're a female. So or somebody asks for your information, they're gonna look at you like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. It's like, no, I'm trying to do business just like you try to do business every time somebody comes up here, So it's something that you have to just kind of like, either I call them out on it, but you can't let that hinder you from doing what you want to do. And the truth of the matter is that sometimes guys are going to be more receptive to trying to meet up with you because they like you or because you're a female. So it is sometimes easier for me to say, hey, can we sit down and talk? I had some ideas I want to run by you. And to me, it's kind of like, okay, it might be easier for me to get that sit down, but you really have to just represent yourself in the right way. And sometimes you have to be like extra conservative just because you don't want anybody to think anything. But I'll say out of the three of us, I probably get it the harshest just because I'm a woman. There's some guys who think that women don't know anything just because we're female. So you're a female, what do you know about hip hop? What do you know about this? And there's some women that are just going to hate on you because you're a female. Oh, I can't stand the way she dresses. Oh, did you see how she was looking at him in the interview? And it's just like, there's, what can I say? It's just what people do. So you have to have really tough skin. I would say that as a female doing what it is that we do, because all the time people are judging you. People are saying negative things. And of course, people say positive things too. But it is something that is going to happen. And I don't really know how you can make it not happen except be successful. And the more successful you get, the more you're going to hear good and bad.
Right. That's so true. So just kind of being sure of yourself and knowing what you're doing.
You just kind of have to say, whatever. Like, I feel like no matter what anybody says about me, if you love me, if you hate me, it's not going to stop me from doing what I have to do. If you hate me, that should just motivate me even more just so I can be like, okay, well, guess what? I ain't going nowhere.
Thank you so much. So going into our next question, who is your favorite personality to interview, and can you share the experience with them and how it like changed your life without saying the name, but just a celebrity that you interviewed that you really feel like they made you think about something different or kind of impacted you?
There's been a few people who have done that. I would say when I was at Sirius, my first big interview, and I say it was with Jay-Z. And that kind of cemented my job because when I started there, I was just on probation. Like I wasn't getting paid. They were trying to figure out if I could work on the morning show because they had tried some other people out too. So they didn't know. It was just like a probationary audition period. And once we did that interview, they did decide to keep me, and it was really fun and it was great. So that's something that really changed things for me. And another person I would say, and this is crazy, but JB Smoove, the comedian, and you know, he's from the Husbands of Hollywood. He's from Curb Your Enthusiasm. And he told me this crazy story about, you know, his audition. It was kind of like fate for him to go do Curb Your Enthusiasm. And, you know, it was impressive to me. And it for some reason, it's something that I still really think about all the time.
That's amazing. So going into our next question, you have been a supporter of Ween from day one. How do you use your position to advocate for causes or organizations you believe in?
Well, I always supported Ween. Well, shout out to Felicia because I think what she's doing is great. You know, I love the fact that it's about empowering women. And I appreciate the fact that everybody from Ween always reaches out to me to ask me to do things because I think it's important for me to, I always feel like in order for you to be successful, it is always important to share your success with others and try to help other people. And so that's something that I've always believed in. Like if we have interns and I feel like they're outstanding, and they do a great job, I've always tried to help them find other jobs doing things or, you know, even try to get them to work with us. I've gotten people jobs at Power. I've gotten people jobs at other places. And I've referred people to different things. And I always feel like you have to pay it forward because I wouldn't feel right if I didn't. And like even now, there's other things that I'm working on. I feel like, and I always say, if I can go to the club, you know, for a couple of hours and make some money, then I can afford to go to a school and talk for a couple of hours for free. It's all about balancing the things that you do in your life.
Thank you. And why is it so important for you to personally give back? Like what about even things outside of your career growing up? What inspired you to be in the position you are now and feel like it's important to give back?
I mean, it just means, it means a lot more to me than anything. Even if it's just one person whose life that you can affect in a positive way, like it means a lot to me. There's people, and you know, I don't share any of the stories or names of people, but there's people who reached out to me on Twitter or on Instagram, you know, saying certain things in their life that weren't going well. And I will like call people. I've gotten emails from people from my Ask E the Advice column where, you know, a lot of people have no one that they can talk to. And even if you just email them back, and I've done things like, let me get your phone number, and I will call somebody, take somebody out to eat, whatever, help somebody get whatever it is that they need to get, just because it's such a small thing. Like it could be a small thing for me to have to do that, but it could mean so much to them and change somebody's whole life. Like I've had people hit me up and people's mothers hit me up and other family members and say, you know, thank you so much for reaching out to her. It really helped her out a lot. And, you know, I have a lot of friends, and I know that a lot of times my friends call me when they need to talk about certain things and vent with no judgment. And so I think that even like with my Ask You segment, that all came about because everybody always comes to me with their problems. And I do really love helping people. It just makes me, maybe it's selfish, it makes me feel good.
That's good. Thank you so much. Moving on to our next question. Do you have, aside from the lip service, do you have any up and coming projects that we need to be looking out for that we can support you on?
Well, that's interesting. I do have some other things that I'm working on. I do want to say this. After I realized, you know, a lot of people weren't raised in a way where they were taught about investing in your credit and, you know, your financial situations and all of that. I know, like, I've always had bad credit since I was in college, and I fixed my credit, like everything's perfect now. I bought a house, all the things that I've always wanted to do. And the next thing that I've always wanted to do is invest my money. So I've been getting into like the stock market, which has been huge for me. And then also I want to invest in some businesses. And so the next thing that I am working on is with Styles P. And he has these 3 juice bars, Juices for Life in Yonkers and in the Bronx. And so the next thing we're going to do is bring one to Brooklyn. So I was just with him earlier tonight. We were doing this event with Emblem Health and with Power 105. And I had him come out and, we did some samples. But what I love about that is that it's about promoting health in the community. It's teaching people about juicing, teaching people about different things that they can do to be healthier. And that's something that I feel is really beneficial. It's better than building a fast food place or investing in something like that. This is something that I feel like, can literally change people's lives. You can see them. And I've gone to his other juice bars and these people that started coming and they were overweight, they were unhealthy, and you see the change that they can go through in their life just by educating themselves and by just doing healthier things, and they taste great. Like the smoothies are great. I drink smoothies every single morning because it gives me energy. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day. So just knowing the right things to drink and all of that makes such a huge difference. So that's the next thing that we're working on. We're just trying to get the right location, to get that started. But I'm so excited about that.
That's so fun. That's so cool. Well, we're really proud of you, and I think that's a great initiative. And like you said, fast foods and things like that are one thing, but something that actually empowers the community and allows you to make money is always great.
Yeah.
So any final remarks or additional tips you would like to provide for our listeners, not necessarily just wanting to become radio personalities, but just in the entertainment field as a whole?
I just think that it's always important to keep growing. And I know I said this earlier, but just never be complacent. I think it's important to know the difference between being annoying and being consistent, and make sure you are consistent. Just make sure that I find that, how can I say this? Like I did a lot of internships when I was younger, and that is one of the most important things. But I feel like internships are so different now than they were when I was younger. Like when I was younger, I would work way more than I had to and go above and beyond. And it's really important to go above and beyond. I find that like we get a lot of different interns that pass through, and there's only a few, very few, that have stood out to me as people that seemed really motivated and that I felt like I would actually later on hire. So I feel like make sure you always pay attention because you never know who's watching. And don't wait for somebody to give you something. You can get out there and create opportunities for yourself. And that's something that's really, really important, I think. And always learn, always educate yourself. Always make sure you're paying attention to what's going on around you, and think about like financially investing and all of that. Because if you one day want to make a lot of money and be wealthy, there's no way you're going to do it without investing. So you have so much access to things as far as like online, as far as courses that you can take. There's so much access. Get yourself a mentor. If you don't have a mentor, think about what it is that you love. Really sit down, and sometimes it's important to do this. Sit down and think about the things that you're passionate about. And then figure out how can you make money doing those things that you're passionate about so it never feels like you're working.
Perfect. And you mentioned a lot about internships. What are some things that our listeners should look for in a good internship?
I think in a good internship, figure out people that you look up to, look at the path that they took, or look at where they're at now and try to reach out to somebody and see if you can somehow get an internship working where they work. And I think when you do that, it's important that you, first of all, make sure that you spell everything right. Like don't contact somebody via email or whatever, trying to get an internship and things are spelled wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. Be very specific. Be like, okay, I watched your path and I know you've done this, 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 and that. This is what I'm doing right now. I feel like I could be beneficial for this reason. Or, I listened to the show and I know you're looking for this. Just make sure that we feel some type of connection, because I think that is something that will really help. It's not like you can't just tweet somebody and be like, yo, I'm looking for a job. That's not good enough. Make sure you do things that stand out. Put in the extra little bit of work and you'll be surprised what can happen.
Well, thank you so much.
All around.
Thank you so much for your time. Just for our listeners who may not know, please be sure to repeat your Twitter name, your Instagram, where they can find you, your website, your sound files, and everything.
Well, my Twitter is @AngelaYee. My Instagram is also @AngelaYee. And I have a Facebook page also. What is it? Is it Angie M. Yee? Is it? I think that was taken. Well, you can look for me. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me. if you just search for Angela Yee. And, Lip Service is soundcloud.com/Lip Service Podcast and all of that.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Raven. I appreciate it.
Of course, later. Okay, guys, thank you for listening. We're going to go into our second guest speaker for today. But before we do, please be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Ween Online. And if you are watching on Instagram and Twitter, also be sure to take photographs, take notes, write down tips, tweet them, and put the hashtag Ween Online. And if you have to use the restroom or anything, this is the time to do it. Our next guest will be on in 3 minutes. Hello?
I'm here.
Perfect.
Let's see, did I do that right? Can you see me?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So everyone, we're back from our intermission. Thank you for joining us for our first half. Now we're moving into our second half, and we have our special guest host for today, Ms. Helen Little from 106.7 Light FM. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
So our listeners are very excited to hear from you and learn about what it takes to be a radio personality. I'm going to go into some questions and take your time, answer them in full. But before we do, can you please provide our listeners with your Instagram and Twitter handle so they can follow you? And thank you so much. So everyone, we're back from our intermission.
My
for joining
hold on
us
one
for our
second. I have
first
two
half.
windows open here.
Now we're moving into our second half.
Okay, sorry about that. A little technical glitch. My Instagram and my Twitter and my Facebook are all the same. Helen R. Little, at Helen R. Little. You can also reach me there on Google Plus as well. So I keep it simple. And the way I tell people to remember it is instead of Helen is Little, Helen R. Little, but that's my middle initial.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So we'll get right into it. My first question for you is, many of our listeners are mass communications majors at their college, and they're learning the technical side of the business. But can you take a minute to talk about what are the skills that are not taught in an academic setting that are needed to be a great radio host?
Well, the first thing that you can't learn in advance is the politics of the business. And that's something that you kind of learn on the job, and it's different at every single place. It may be a little bit more similar in the same city. If you work in New York and you go from one state to the next, you're going to find similar kind of activity in terms of what you've got to do to navigate the politics of a radio station, because you're dealing with your salespeople, you're dealing with other programming people, you're dealing with marketing, you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with listeners. So that's one of the things that you've got to learn on your own. Also, creating a job growth path. One of the things that I did early on is picking the areas that I was going to work in. And if I had the opportunity to be on air, that was great. But if I didn't, I would go work in something that was similar, like maybe in the sales department or I became a copywriter. I did all these other areas that later on paid off for me. But I also realized what my strengths were, what I wanted, where I felt like I could contribute. So I started out on air. My very first job was on air doing overnight weekends. And it was at a commercial radio station. I didn't work at college radio, but it was in my college town. So I got the opportunity to jump right into it, so to speak. Then I realized I liked the music aspect of it, and I wanted to program music. So I started learning what I needed to learn in order to become a music director, and then a program director, and then an operations manager, and then also a person who had a national position. I was the director of urban programming for the company that is now iHeart, before it was iHeart, and had all these other opportunities that I built off of being able to do other things at the radio station. So just because I didn't get an on-air job and I ended up being a receptionist, that paid off for me because I learned an aspect of the business that I wouldn't have known. So it's like, don't be afraid to use different doors to go in to get to where you want to go, but have a job growth plan. What are you doing next? Another thing that I do usually as soon as I get a job is I update my resume and start thinking about what's next for me. Learn about finances, salary expectations, and the art of negotiating the salary that you want. As women, a lot of the times we don't negotiate for what we want. We don't know our worth sometimes. And one of the things that I like to do is, okay, you may not give me any more money, but what else can you give me? All right, give me an extra week of vacation, or, you know, give me a car allowance. Or so being a part of that negotiating thought process is, what else can you give me if you can't give me cash? So that's one thing. Can't teach passion. You have to have that. Either you have it or you don't. You're not going to learn passion in college. That was the least of my worries. I'm an extremely passionate person. I'm passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I've been doing it for over 30 years, and I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it at a high level. I have the largest listened to radio show in the country of a non-syndicated program. I reach more people than any single jock at any station anywhere in America. And most people don't know that because we're not a radio station that, you know, like, woohoo, you know, that touts what we do. But because we have a mass appeal format, I have the luxury of reaching a lot of people, and I don't take that for granted. I realize that all of the things that I've done have led up to this. And another thing that's very important in terms of this position, if you're going for it, is being flexible, willing to relocate in terms of moving your whole life from here to whoever in a snap. I had a young man reach out to me. We had a mutual friend. His mentor was a friend of mine, and he got offered a job in the Cayman Islands. And he was really nervous about leaving California and going to Grand Cayman. And I told him, are you crazy? If you don't take the job, I will. That's another thing to be aware of, is that there are hungry people out there. Hunger and passion kind of go in the same category, but be willing to relocate, be willing to be flexible. I got moved around inside of a radio station to several different day parts, and I kind of stuck my bottom lip out about it because I wasn't crazy about the idea. But then I sat back and like, this is nice too. This job or this job, they're both the opportunity for me to do what I love inside of a radio station. So being flexible, be willing to relocate, passion and hunger, finances and salary expectations and negotiation, having a job growth path and plan, and learning to navigate the politics are things you're not going to learn when you're in school, but important to learn on the job, or even have someone mentoring you and helping you to learn those things in advance.
Perfect. Those are really, really great tips. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So my second question for you is, a lot of millennials are focused on building their brand, but we know that that takes years and years of hard work. How did you begin the process of building your brand?
There was no such thing as building my brand when I started out. I'm not ashamed of my age. I'm 53 years old. I got my first radio job in 1983. So, you know, back then it was about being the best you could be. The best brand awareness you can create is via integrity, strong work ethic, being good at what you do, and, you know, bringing some talent to that. But more than anything, you know, I think it's a waste of your time and your career to build a brand instead of building a great product of you. You know, I can tell you, yeah, my brand is Helen R. Little, you know, and everything, it's on everything you're going to see. But if Helen R. Little is not good at being the brand, then there's no point in having a brand. So it's like inviting people over to your house and not cleaning up.
Mhm.
So the first thing you want to do is before you invite people in your home is to have a clean home, is to have a great talent, is to have something to offer. Because to me, a brand is empty. It's what you fill it with that's important. So I would look for anything that remotely relates to opportunity and creating opportunity. Once you have that opportunity and you live up to the opportunity, that's when the brand becomes valuable. Because you can have a brand all day and all night, but it has no value because you haven't filled it with anything. So that's one thing that's very different about today's landscape versus when I started, because the brand came when people like, I heard this girl in Chapel Hill. She's just starting out. She sounds good. Let's hire her. To be honest, the last time I applied for a job, as opposed to them coming to me, was the 80s. That's how you build a brand. You go in, you do good work, people find you. You cannot hide a diamond in the mud. Someone will find it. So that's what I would advise. Yes, make sure that you are consistent with your message, and your message is, I'm a person of integrity. I'm a person with talent. I'm a person who's determined to succeed at this. I'm a person with great focus. That's your brand. The name is what houses all of that, if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. Thank you so much. So going into our next piece, what inspired you to become a radio personality, and who did you look for inspiration coming up?
I grew up listening to the radio. That was my favorite pastime. I've always been passionate about music. I loved music. I didn't watch a lot of TV. I would do my homework and listen to the radio. So I listened to a small AM station in my hometown of Salisbury, North Carolina. And that's what I would listen to. And I won a prize on a radio station. I went up to the radio station and I got to see it for the first time. And it was like fascinating to me. That didn't do it. I go to college. I decide I want to research sleep and dreams. I'm going to be a scientist, right? Those classes were hard. And on my fall break, I went home to visit one of my friends from high school who worked at that same radio station. And while I was there, I was watching him work, and I asked him, I said, is this hard? And he's like, this? No, it's easy. So I switched my major to radio, television, and motion pictures. I went to school in Chapel Hill, North Carolina at the University of North Carolina. And I got my first job while I was still in college. So I got a paying job on a radio station when I was still in college. And my friend David is the one from high school. He's the one who really inspired me to try it. I was very shy. So I liked the idea of talking to people I couldn't see, kind of like now. But I was talking to people that I couldn't see. The other thing that inspired me, to be honest, is you didn't have to get dressed up. You know, I didn't have to comb my hair. I didn't have to put on no makeup. I didn't have to do any of that. I could just go sit in a room by myself, play some music, and talk to people I couldn't see. That was perfect for me. I also did grow up listening to people on the radio, many of who no one here would know because they were all in North Carolina. They were in small stations. There was this one woman in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Her name was Kitty Kennan, and she was smooth, and I liked the way she sounded. So I kind of mimicked her and learned to find my voice by listening to her. And back then, you know, they looked for more of a polished sound. Now it's much better that you are truly your authentic voice. That's your inner voice and your outer voice. So I think that's more important. I wanted something that was fun and easy because my college advisor said to me, find something you want to do for the rest of your life. Well, at 18, fun was the priority, and I'm still having fun today. So it's taken me on an amazing journey. I've met some amazing people, but most of the people that inspired me were like small hometown heroes.
It's amazing.
Thanks.
And we all have hometown heroes that we love and that make us kind of go to that next level. So I think that's amazing, and something that all of our viewers can kind of relate to. The radio industry is becoming very competitive. How does one maintain longevity and credibility over the years?
Well, the interesting thing is it's always been competitive since I've been in it. It used to be that you only had one woman per radio station, and she had one of two shifts. She was either on the middays or she was on late nights. When I first started in radio, they didn't even want to play two female artists back to back on the radio because the thought process was that no one wanted to listen to women. They didn't want to hear them talk. They didn't want to hear them sing. And that didn't change until Janet Jackson and Madonna and Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. So this is the 90s before they started, because they was like, oh my God, we have all of these female artists. How are we gonna not play them in one stretch? So that's when they started to realize, okay, I can play a Janet Jackson song and I can play a Madonna song. Mm-hmm. And it's like, sounds crazy now, doesn't it? But in all reality, they really felt like women didn't want to hear women. So it became even more competitive, because if there was already a woman on the radio station, they weren't going to hire another one. So there might be one part-timer and one full-timer. So if that allotment was taken, forget about it. It wasn't going to happen. So if the competition is also on the inside as well. Nowadays, the landscape is different because you have big companies that own everything. When I started, you couldn't have more than one AM and one FM, if I'm not mistaken, in a market. You couldn't own that. So you had friendly competition within the radio station, whereas like who could do a better break, or who could create a better commercial, or who could, do a better bit. So we encouraged each other, and it was like, it was fun. Now it's not as much cooperation. People don't really work together to better each other. But the competition for any particular job is tighter because there's less jobs, and you also have less owners. So, for example, if I needed to get a job tomorrow, well, the company I work for owns almost everything. So if they don't like me anymore, it's going to be hard. And there's like maybe 5 or 6 companies. However, the best thing you can do is not limit yourself in your opportunities, because you just never know where they are and where they come from. So when you think of competition as a positive as opposed to a negative, it changes the landscape, and you're able to navigate it better. And like, looking in places that you might not think you wanted to live, which is the first thing that I did. I never had any aspiration to come to New York because it snows in New York, and I don't like snow. I've learned to live with it. So when I first decided to leave North Carolina, I sent my demo out to any market that was warm. So it was Dallas and Miami and all these different places. And I ended up in Dallas, Texas. Somebody told me I would never get a job in New York because everybody wants to work in New York. I got that job, my first job at WBLS, in '94 because somebody told me I couldn't do it. So that's what I've identified that since then, that's a motivator for me. Tell me I can't do something. Please don't, but do. And I'm going to show you that I can do it. So you're competing now in the radio landscape, not just against radio. Anything that's a music delivery service, if you are on a music channel, you're competing with satellite and podcast and digital delivery like a iHeart on your phone, or Pandora, SoundCloud, and Spotify, and on and on and on. And anybody who can play a song to a mass audience is now your competitor. So you've got to always go back to that brand, be good at what you do in order to make it this long. I've been doing this for 30 some years. I still love it. And the reason why I think that I'm still doing it is because I started with integrity. I work with integrity. I bring passion to the table. I'm always thinking about what's next. Forward thinking, not necessarily for me, but in this industry. What's next? I remember when social media was just starting. And I realized that one day they're going to hire people just to tweet, just to post on Facebook. those now they have what, you're the CSO, chief social officer. So when you look at the landscape of not just radio or the business that you're in or media, but look at what's happening in the world. What's changing right now? Where is it moving toward? How can I get a piece of that? And that's something to think about.
Very good. Thank you.
Sorry.
So I know you've been in radio for a while, but what's next for you? Do you have a dream project maybe outside of radio?
Finding a billionaire to marry. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, I love radio, and the thing I like about radio, as long as you can talk, you can work. And it's something I feel like I'll be able to do until, you know, they wheel me out of there. But I have other passions and other interests, and I've worked in other areas. I've been the president of a record company. I've been vice president of the marketing department for a major label. I've done some TV, but my passion is writing. So I've just finished the working draft, and I'm ready for people to read my first novel. I found out that my favorite genre is forbidden romance, so it's a forbidden romance. And my next step is to find a literary agent and an editor and to shop it, and then I'm going to turn it into a movie. So my next plan is best-selling author. Although I love to write, I have a passion for real estate. I'm a real estate investor. I dabble in TV. I like motivational speaking, and I wouldn't mind having my own art gallery, coffee shop, wine bar where I could display my original paintings, drawings, and photography, share music and either coffee or wine, because whatever works in that region, because those are things that I'm passionate about. So I like to get paid for my passion because it's not work. And the next thing for me is definitely the novel being published and turned into a movie. And I'm also working on landing a consultancy at a college in my hometown. I just found out, this is what happens as a result of networking and talking to people. The individual that inspired me from high school, I saw him this past weekend. He tells me how this college in our hometown is launching a big initiative for a broadcast media outlet for students in a whole new department. So first thing I hear in my head is opportunity. I didn't go to college there, but it's my hometown, and I have already come up with an idea that I want to pitch to them. I want to do a speakers series, and contact the people that I know who I can reach out and say, hey, they've got a budget to bring in speakers to talk to kids in the radio department. Reaching out to people that I've worked with before, like Tom Joyner or Wendy Williams or Elvis Duran or any number of people, and saying, I've got a budget to bring in speakers to work to talk to these kids on campus. I become a consultant. I help them build their department, seeing that opportunity that's lying ahead. And that's something I'm interested in doing as well. But the books are my main focus.
Amazing. And congratulations on having your first draft ready.
Thank you.
What are some misconceptions about women in the radio industry? How do you advocate against these misconceptions?
The biggest misconceptions is that we don't deserve top dollar. We can't carry a top drive time show. We don't like other women. Women don't want to listen to other women, or that they slept their way to their success. Those are the biggest misconceptions that I've seen. How do we combat them? We negotiate for the top dollar. We get in positions where we can put females in top positions. I've been a program director and an operations manager, and I've hired a lot of women to be in those positions to show people what they can do. When I was at Power 105, Steph Lover was doing afternoon drive, and Egypt was doing morning drive, and Deja was doing middays. So it was like I gave them all the opportunity. I didn't hire all of them, but I might have shifted their responsibility. Deja was already there. All of them were already there, but I put them in a position to do their own shows in some of those instances. So it's like when you're in the position to affect the change, you can affect the change. So now I'm trying to think who's the woman in Philadelphia, Moni Love, is doing the morning show. You would have never heard of women having their own morning show years ago. So that's one of the things, like, we can do those jobs. People will listen to us. Miss Jones used to have her own morning show. She's a perfect example. Obviously, Wendy Williams has had her own afternoon show and now her own television show. The fact that they think that women don't want to listen to women, that's dumb. I mean, I don't have to tell women on here now that, because I'm sure there are women that you listen to that you admire, that you love, that you respect. The fact that they think people slept with someone to get to where they are, that goes back to integrity. You can throw as many darts as you want to at me. I will even start my own room if you want me to help you. But at the end of the day, I know I operate with integrity, and no one can ever take that from you. And the way you change those is by being involved in organizations like Ween, is by, being a person that people can look up to, by helping someone else get to where they want to go. It's about you, but it ain't about you. Because when you make it about somebody else, you've ultimately made it about you, because by deferring and shining the light on someone else, your light shines through. You use that light. So to me, those are some of the things we can do.
Thank you so much for sharing that insight.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your favorite personality to interview? And you can share the experience with us on how it changed your life or how they changed your perspective. And you don't have to say the celebrity's name if you don't want to.
Oh, it doesn't bother me. It's kind of hard sometimes to remember all of them, but the first name that popped in my mind was Tina Turner. I grew up watching Tina Turner on TV, on a TV show called Don Kirshner's Rock Concert. And I remember seeing this Black woman with all this hair out there bringing it. And I'm like maybe 8 years old. And I remember that her music didn't sound like everybody else's music. It didn't sound like Aretha Franklin. It didn't sound like Gladys Knight. But her voice was powerful, and she appealed to everybody. So I'm like, I want to be like her. And even though I didn't interview this woman, I met her, Donna Summer. She was the same way. She was a Black woman. I looked at her, I saw me. Same thing. She had a whole lot of hair. She got up there, she had talent, she brought it, and everybody liked her. It wasn't just that the Black audience liked her. So when I met Tina Turner, this is around when What's Love Got to Do? No, it was after that. It was the Mad Max movie was out. And she walked into the studio and I gasped. She was stunning. I mean, drop dead gorgeous, beautiful, graceful, humble, just the nicest person ever. And she looked younger than me. And I was in my 30s at the time. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I doing wrong? And we had the most down-to-earth conversation. She let me ask her anything. I'm like, what is your workout regimen? She said, I don't work out. I'm like, I hate you, but I love you. And it was just so empowering, because after being an 8-year-old who saw something in her that I wanted to be, as a 30-year-old, I was like, she still does that for me. And she was willing to give that to me and share with me whatever she wanted to share. And it was just beautiful. The other one might be Prince. It wasn't really an interview because he doesn't really talk, but it was my first day on the job at my first radio station ever. I had tickets to go see Prince. And the man that hired me said, can you start on Tuesday? And I was like, oh God, I got tickets to see Prince. I want to go see Prince. But I said yes, and I started the job. And then decades later, I'm sitting arm's length from Prince in his studio at Paisley Park, ultimately in his house, having a conversation with him. So I said to myself, I made the right choice. And that changed my life, because it was like the idea of opening one door, I opened the right door. Les Brown, the motivational speaker. After I interviewed him, we became great friends, and I learned a lot about how to use what I'm doing on air in front of people, because I was very shy at the time, and now I can stand up in front of people and speak. And Dhani Jones, he's a football player. He was a football player for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I wanted to interview him because I was a football fan and he was cute. So I got to go into the locker room and interview him. And that experience changed how I saw sports and what women can do in sports and my interest in sports. And I went on to write a sports blog, and I covered the Philadelphia Eagles, and became a respected voice as a female in a lot of sports circles. So those are the ones that I would probably point out.
Thank you so much. So you've been supporting Ween and other organizations, and we really appreciate it. How do you use your position to advocate for causes or organizations you believe in?
No one came to this earth without someone giving them something or sacrificing for them. So I'm very aware of that every single day. Someone helped me. Someone advocated for me. Someone shared with me. Someone mentored me. Someone taught me. It's my job to give that back, to do that for others. I was the program director of Power 105 in New York when Ween first started, and that's where I met Valicia Butterfield Jones. She was Butterfield at the time. We found out we were both from North Carolina, so we clicked. And I was so moved and motivated by what she was doing. I had to be a part of it. So there's a lot of different ways you can be involved in something like that. You can just help somebody by sharing your knowledge and information. You can write a check. You can create your own organization, you know, and ask people to, and be the conduit to help others. But there's so many different ways. The best way you can help somebody is just to not make it about you. It's to realize somebody gave you something, give that back. Help someone else. Be a light to someone. Be a mentor. I mentor lots of young women and men, and I had some great mentors. That's one of the reasons I continue to mentor. And if you talk to some of the women that I've mentored, I will tell them after they've been with me a while, okay, it's time for you to start. You know, I need you to start mentoring somebody. And they're like, I don't know how. Yes, you do. It's just a matter of trusting your knowledge, your heart, your gut, and when someone needs help, helping them. It's really that simple. One of the things that I'm going to invite people here to do is, like, if you want mentoring from me, use Twitter. I respond to everybody. It may not be immediate. I'm not one of those people I'm not on it now like this, but I will respond to everybody. If you have questions, or if you need help, or if you want some advice, reach out to me on Twitter, and I will gladly help you in that regard. But be willing to put your money where your mouth is. If you see an organization like Ween and you got a little money in your pocket because you've done well, help them, because they're helping someone else. I think that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And also, if you have any final remarks or just final tips that you weren't able to answer in one of the questions that you would like to give to our aspiring radio personalities or women looking to get into entertainment.
Go for it. You know, believe in yourself. Have a plan. I believe in what's called the perfect plan. I've done a lot of things. I mean, the way I climbed my ladder was not like this. It was like this. Mm-hmm. And my first job was radio. I loved radio. I still love radio, obviously. But then I got a job at a record store because I learned a different aspect of the business. So I was doing radio and record retail. There's no more record stores, too bad, because that was great. At the same time. And then I was able, years later, to turn that into becoming the president of Rough Nation Records, which was based in Philadelphia and a part of Warner Brothers, and then working for Warner Brothers, and then coming back to radio, and then starting my own company. At the time, I was managing artists. I was managing a heavy metal band and a hip hop artist and a singer-songwriter, and you know, and don't limit yourself. I've got a friend right now who's out of work, and she's only applying at the same type of radio station she worked at the last time. I'm like, so think about all the radio stations you're missing out on because you've limited yourself to think that this is all you can do. I've worked at jazz, hip hop, country, dance, urban, AC, which is where I am now, hot AC, and something else. I've been mornings, middays, afternoons, overnights, late nights, weekends. I've done news. I was the copywriter, sports commentary for sports, what was it, color commentary. I was really bad, but I did it. Sales, hated sales, but I did it. So I've had almost every job at the radio station, which made me kind of a unique expert. So that when somebody sat down and looked at my resume, they're like, oh, well, you have a clear understanding of what we do every day in every department. So the wealth of knowledge that I brought to the table, you know, was unique, and it helped keep me employed. So don't limit yourself. Don't just want to be on a hip hop station if you could be on Z100 too. Does that make sense? Be unstoppable. You know, if someone says you'll never get a job in New York, prove them wrong. Network, 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 network. Use social media to network. Some people may not like it. I don't mind it. Just don't stalk me. I'm a stalker, but I'm a crafted stalker. And like, okay, perfect example. I said I want to go create this mass communications thing at this college. I went to Twitter and I've followed the college. I followed every department in the college that might be closely related. I followed the movers and shakers in the community who might help me accomplish it. I followed people that I knew that worked for the radio stations and worked for the college. Like, so I started doing my homework and my research to find out what's my connection, what's in my network that's going to help me get to the person that's going to make the decision to write me a check to be a consultant. Operate with integrity. You've heard me say that maybe a couple of times. Your reputation is your calling card. It is everything you've got. So that's the biggest thing I could say to leave you with. Be a contributor, not a taker. Give back, give back, give back.
Thank you so much. You were amazing today, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And once again, for anyone who tuned in late, can you just say your Twitter and Instagram again?
Yes, at Helen R. Little.
Perfect.
Same thing, both of them.
Okay, thank you so much, and you have a great evening.
Let me know you're a part of Ween, and I will definitely follow you back as well.
Okay, thank you guys. You hear that? Let her know you're a part of Ween, and she will follow you back. Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, guys, thank you everyone for joining us. Before we leave, I want to put in some plugs. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Ween Online. The hashtag for the organization is also Ween Online. Don't forget, if you haven't got your tickets already, November 18th is our 5th annual Ween Awards, www.weenonline.org. I'm going to pull it up now so you guys can overview the website. And thank you once again, everyone, for joining us, and look out for our next webinar.